Hello everyone, and welcome to this Grease Pencil Toolbox tutorial. This is an add-on I've developed in Autour de Minuit studio based in Paris. It's supposed to enhance the workflow for 2D animation production, and now that it has been open sourced, we're gonna see how it can be useful. So first thing, to get the add-on, you can go to the GitLab page Autour de Minuit /blender/gp-toolbox, and in the README you have the download latest link. And you also have a comprehensive documentation and documentation in French with the link here. So once that's done, let's get to it. So the first option you have in the toolbox panel is a mirror flip option. Once you toggle, it's just doing a -1x scale on the camera. So you can flip your drawing and you have a little arrow saying when you are on a negative scale to go back to the original. Then the draw cam and object cam are here to manage the position and rotation of the camera. Once you enter in the draw cam, it's actually duplicating a cam. You see that it's created a manipulation camera collection. When you are clicking here, you're actually going back and forth between your original camera, considered as the main camera, and the draw cam. The idea here is the draw cam is exactly the same and parented to the main camera. And this allows you to do rotation without affecting your original camera. And you can also reset rotation with the button here. So the rotation snap again to the original camera, and there is a little arrow here saying that you are in a manipulation camera and you can go back in the main by clicking here. And here's the little info that's saying you're in the main camera. The object camera is a little different. The idea is if you want to follow an object, for example here the Grease Pencil object is animated, and if you want to follow it, you just have to go in object mode, select the object, place your view where you want, and click on object cam. And here you can see that it created a camera again in the manipulation cam collection, and it's parented to the objects, so you can follow it, and it's avoid just disabling the animation. So sometimes it can be easier to do it that way. If you need to change the view, you can go out of the camera view, select another object, or here the same, and you have the set view button, and it's gonna go into this view. Again, you can go to the main camera with this button, and here you can go either on the draw cam, on the up or the object cam. So here is the system I came up with to simplify the movement of the camera. By the way, when you're in the draw cam, the rotation are made with the rotate canvas add-on that is in the official Grease Pencil add-on I also developed, and you just have to activate it in the preferences. It's under Grease Pencil tools, and you have also the rotate canvas here with the default shortcuts, and the box deform to deform the line with Ctrl+T, and the all new timeline scrub that's gonna be in the Blender 293, this one. So here I'm just gonna reset this, and after we have the Passepartout, so this allows better focus on your camera. You can just disable it with this little button here. The zoom 1:1 and the zoom fits are allowed to quickly reset the view. And after that, the playblast options, those are actually not the resolution you can see here. This is not correlated to the resolution, so this can be a lower resolution you can use to do your playblast. The viewport's gonna just get what you have on the viewports. It's using basically this viewport render animation, but the playblast is actually making a copy of the file under the hood and rendering in background. So when you're launching it, it's not blocking you in any way. You can continue doing what you want, and there is a playblast progress that will be displayed here, and you can cancel it with Shift Escape, which I'm gonna do. This one is still a bit in work in progress. The cursor follow on off, sometimes it can be useful. It's to attach the 3D cursor to an object. For example, here it's on the selected object. So here, for example, I activate it, and you see that the cursor is following. And once I disable it, it's stopped following. And you can just select an object. When you change an object, it's gonna follow. And this is actually useful if you are painting on the 3D cursor position when you're selecting the cursor here in the settings of the grease pencil. The onion skin is just a shortcut for the onion skin toggle you have here. The autolock layer again is just for convenience. You have it here, usually autolock inactive layer. And or here, same autolock inactive layer. The X-ray is actually an object properties. You can find it within the objects property in viewport display, and it's the in front properties. It's easier to find here, and when you have an object that's going between the camera and the object, it's really nice to have. This little information box here just saying that we have a different name with the object and the actual data, and this is handy to have the same, because here in the grease pencil this is the data of the grease pencil that it's displayed, so it says that it can rename it for you. So I'm just gonna check rename. And here you can see that it's now has the data block has the same name as the objects. Next, the edit line opacity allow you to disable the lines that are displayed when you are in edit mode if they are not selected. For example, here I'm gonna go down with the alpha, and this is usually something you have in the display, but it's at a layer level, and here it's applying these settings to all the objects, grease pencil objects, and all the layer of each of those grease pencil objects. So that way you can quickly set this as you want. Now, create empty frame is just usually interesting for coloring, because as the tooltip suggests, it's for creating empty frames where there is frame in the layer above. Check file is a way to quickly fix your file for a project. For example, in the add-on preference, you have some settings here, some project settings you can set in and save in your add-on preference. Here is saying the frame rate should be 25 and the render resolution and everything. And there are also some hard-coded options that it will check. For example, here if I hit check file, it says that it locked the main camera, it changed the resolution to project settings, and it corrected the frame rates, and also changed the tool to select lasso. You can change this in the user preference, and activated the grease pencil additive drawing mode, and this corresponds to this little snowflake you have here to paint on the last keyframe. Maybe I should change that in the or give the option in the user preference. And also it's doing other things like toggling on the sync visible range, which is useful to have. It's syncing the two editors here. Yeah, it's basically a file checker. The checklinks allow you to see if there is anything missing. For example, here it says no external link in this file, so there's nothing to check. But if you were to have a reference to link, for example, here I have a ref file, so I'm gonna put it there, and you can see that if I hit check links, it's gonna say yeah, there is one file, and you can open the file or open the location of this file, so you can check the library of the file and if there is anything broken. And once I have this reference dropped inside the camera, you can see that there another panel popped up, and it's just a shortcut to the background image of the camera, so you can quickly check the reference and or all the reference at once, because usually you have to select the camera and then go into the camera settings, and here you have the background image. So again, a shortcut to have this quicker. So now I'm gonna disable this. Let's talk about the animation manager. This is just a way to quickly enable or disable the animation evaluation of the objects. So for example, here I have an animation, and if I want to just draw in there without having to follow the movements, even if you can do this with the object camera, you can just say that the GP you want off, and as you can see here, you have the animation in place, and above the object animation are to handle all the animations that are non-grease pencil objects. And if you click on list disabled anim, it will say which objects and which properties have some animation disabled. For example, here if I toggle everything on, list disable anim, it says no animation disabled on this scene. Next, the tint layer is actually a bit tricky, because you can use this if you aren't using the tint in your layer, because it's gonna override it, it's gonna change the value, and it's just a way to quickly see visually which strokes are on which layer. If I use it here, you can see, let me just disable the fade layer. You can see the layer by color, and if you're not happy with the color, you can there is a tint hue offset, so you can change the color and you have it there. And use prefix here, and if you want, for example, here the fx underscore and fx underscore are getting the same color even if they are on a different layer, because they use the same prefix. If I toggle off this and see the tint again, not anymore. So I'm just gonna hit the reset tint, and it's just using the factor and getting it to 0. But again, if you are using tint, do not use the tint layer. Next is the render panel. I will not talk about this one too much, because I will change probably soon this the way it works. But basically, it's supposed to help exporting the objects. For example, here you can name. I have this name. If I want to, let's say I want this to be named example as an output and setup output, and here it's gonna set the as PNG, RGBA, and set the path to the path you have set in the output path of the preferences. Now let's dive into the palette management. You have a palette folder you can set here, and it's just to have a quick access to the place where you export or import palettes. To import or export those, you can go to the material panel, and here you can load the JSON palette, save a JSON palette, or load the color palette. This third one seems to be the same as this one, but it's actually loading a palette from a blend. So if you save a blend and you are pointing with this one, you're just gonna load every material you have in this blend. So for example, here I want to export this palette. Actually, I'm just gonna add another material quickly, say for example green, and save as JSON, and I'm gonna overwrite the extended one I've made earlier. And for example, here if I delete this one and even delete this one, and if I hit the load as JSON and use this, here I have my palette. So this is a quick way to exchange palette with other, or making palette per character or something, so you can quickly import according to your shots. Now let's see what we have in the other panel of the toolbox. You have also these two. The line stopper is actually for the colorization step. It allows you to extend the lines, so the bucket fill will fill the area you want, depending on the drawing, of course. So this is not the best example with my stickman drawing here, But let's see. Yeah, I have this one. And as you can see here, it's created a new material, close lines automatically, and it's creating those little stroke here to close the gap, and you can adjust the length here. Sometimes can be a real time saver for the bucket fill tool. And you can also show the lines, change the length again with the existing lines here. The grease pencil clipboard is a really interesting way to copy, cut, paste strokes in a world space, meaning that it always be in the same place you have copied from wherever the object is. For example, here, if I take those two arms and I use the Ctrl-Shift-C, you have a Ctrl-Shift-C, Ctrl-Shift-X, and Ctrl-Shift-V as a shortcut for these three. And I move in time, and here if I paste, you can see that those are pasted at the exact place they were before, which is not the case if you use the basic Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V. So this is another option, and it's really interesting to have. It's like baking your strokes in place, and you can do it for the whole layer using the copy layer and paste layer. It's actually using the selected layer, so you can select multiple at once. Also, the cut is slightly more user-friendly, because if you select just some point here and Ctrl-Shift-X, it's just as moved because I have a modifier. If I disable this, it will not move when I cut. So you can see that the 2 points here were not deleted. So if I Ctrl-Shift-V again, you have exactly the same, but the stroke is now separated. This is interesting. Ctrl-Shift-X, Ctrl-Shift-V. Now let's talk about the keyframe jump option that might be the most useful in the whole toolbox. By default, it's activated and you have a automatically bounded shortcut that you can change, but I want to show you how you can use it manually, because there is an interest to it. If you go to the operator tab, you can see that you can copy to clipboard the ID name. You can see that it was copied here. Then you just have to go to the key map, screen global, so it can be triggered anywhere, not only in the 3D view or inside the timeline editor. Click on add new and add Ctrl-V, paste your ID name, and there you have some options. So I'm gonna use F5 for previous, jump to previous keyframe. So previous is not next, so you just have to untick next GP keyframe. And by default it's on active and selected, but you can decide to take into account all the visible layer, for example. And so you have to add another one for the next, and say, let's say all visible layer and F6. So here, as you can see, it's jumping and taking account even here the layer that is not the active one. Again, as I said previously, if I kill those two, the add-on can autobind them, and it's even enabled by default. So you have the keyframe here. By default, it's on F6 and F5. It's because it's the only keys that are free by default in Blender, and also because those are keys that are the same across multiple keyboard layouts if you are on QWERTY, on or AZERTY or whatever. But you just have to click here and then change your settings. There are also other shortcuts that are automatically binded. For example, if you're in Sculpt mode, there is a shortcut to activate the restriction of selection by using the 1, 2, and 3 key. And since here it's a toggle, if you, for example, on the 2, you can type 2 again to enable disable. This comes really handy because you are often changing the selection restriction toggle, as you can do it natively in the edit mode. Another thing I want to mention is that there is a passive functionality, is that every time you save, it's launched the operator for remap relative, because in this time of remote working, it's useful to have always your path as a relative, so you don't lost anything when you send it to another person or another department. So this is something I will maybe expose, so you can disable it. There is also a shortcut that I didn't bind here, but you can see here, just to snap the cursor on the canvas of the grease pencil, because when you move your cursor, it's not taking into account the grease pencil plane, and it's act on the selected grease pencil object you have, and it will snap on the view plane. Another shortcut I forgot to mention is Shift+E in object mode, and this allows you to trigger a breakdown exactly the same, I mean almost exactly the same as the one you have when you are in armature pose mode. It's because sometimes it's useful to animate directly your objects, and this way you can, for example, between those two keys, I can Shift+E, and there I can break down to some amount and I can type a percentage and then a key or whatever. And I think that concludes this long overview of the grease pencil toolbox, at least in this current version. There will be many more tools to come in the next version, and if you find any bugs, please report using the report a bug button to the GitLab page or in the video or Twitter or whatever. And I'm really excited that we got to share this tool. I see that also other studios are open sourcing their tool as well, and this really is really great for open source and Blender community. See you in the next video, and happy blending!